Paul, tell me a little bit more about you.
My name is Paul Hughes, and as an Irishman, I am passionate about storytelling because it's in my DNA. I come from a long tradition of Irish storytellers, and working with stories, telling stories, and engaging people with the power of stories is what I've been doing for 23 years. So for a long time, I've been living a story, helping others to find their story and tell their story.
Chris, what about you? Who are you?
So that's a very difficult question, but generally I say that although I'm speaking English, ik ben ook Nederlander, dus ik woon gewoon in Nederland.
Where? Tell me your little village, because it's very hard to pronounce the G.
I got the pronunciation right. It's 𝒃𝒐𝒒𝒆.
Yeah. And Paul is actually moved before the lockdown from Amsterdam to the very beautiful country island in the west.
I'm in the far west of Ireland. It's beautiful.
So then I go on to say, je suis aussi français. J'étais né français. J'ai vécu en France. Alors s'il y a des Français ici, dis bonjour. And I'm also Australian, so my English isn't really English. It's like Australian, right?
It's like Chinese there.
Salut. Any Australians on the call? G'day, mate. So I'm Australian, and I was born on a little tropical island called Vanuatu, which was like a French colony. And so I was born ni Vanuatuan. So I've got 3 official nationalities. I can claim a 4th one. And at the end of the day, the point is, I don't know where I'm from, and I don't know who I am anymore. So, and I think that relates to a lot of people in this world now. We're so connected. We're everywhere, right?
Yeah. Shall we start with a little introduction video? Because there we are talking about this story. So let it go. Let me see. There you go.
If you want to change the world, change your story. Why don't you let that sink in for a minute? Have you ever wondered what we're best at? What makes people people? It's storytelling. We're addicted to captivating, exciting, wonderful, engaging stories. It's what we do. Stories are the basis of human connection. It's in our DNA. It's what makes up our thoughts, our world, our economy, even our physical well-being. But we got a little lost along the way. Negativity and fear seem to be thriving, giving, in search of clicks and shares. Our normal way of storytelling slowly became mass media consumption, numbers, news, social overload. But what if this new normal isn't normal to begin with? Maybe we ought to slow down a little. Take a minute to look outside. Make a real connection with the one thing we're all part of. Especially now, it seems essential to reconnect, to adapt, reset, spread positivity and purpose. If you want to change the world, change your story. So maybe you're not that much of an individual. After all, it takes more than one person to get a story across. So the real question is, what kind of world do you want to live in? What story do you want to tell?
Welcome to the power of your story. Welcome, everyone. Paul, let's start. What's the definition of story? And by the way, my name is Maurice van der Kant. I'm from Assemblee Speakers. I'm the founder of bookingworldspeakers.com. And of course, Chris, Paul, you are really much engaged. Sorry about that. Please, can you, Malé, can you go out, please? Malé, can you, thank you. So you are both engaged to the story, the new story, 𝒃𝒐𝒐𝒌𝒆𝒄, a community about how can we collaborate in a more meaningful way in the speaking event industry. Yeah, tell your engagement. Why do you think this is far much important?
So I love the message that we've just seen in this video. If you want to change the world, change your story. For me, the key thing here is your story. So Gandhi would speak about be the change you want to see in the world. So why is a story so powerful? Because a story is the only thing that has ever changed the world. In other words, a story starts here and moves us outwards. A story creates emotion. And if you want people to move motion, you need emotion. So a story is the only thing that has ever moved the world. I personally am fully connected to this message. And if there's anything I want to speak about today in this piece, it's about your story.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. And of course, Chris, it's so beautiful to have you here. And yeah, we met each other when you were in Australia for the first time. And suddenly I called you, can you do a TED Talk? And you asked me when. I say, tomorrow. Tell me about that story.
So, yeah, it's one of the key pivotal points in my life. I was actually just coming back from Milan and on a keynote. I was on a keynote tour and I was sick in bed. And Maurice calls me up and he goes, "Would you like to do a TED Talk?" And I was waiting for this moment, right? I was waiting for this moment. I've been queuing you up. I need to do a TED Talk. That's a great asset to have as a speaker. But why did it have to come when I was sick in bed? Why did it have to come when I had a throat infection, when I had like 39.5-degree fever? And then I said, sure, I'll do it. When is it? And then on top of all of that, you go, it's tomorrow, right? And so I think that what I'll be talking about as we go into this webinar is that really it's the no problems attitude that really pivoted me towards doing this TED Talk at the last moment.
Yeah, yes. Thank you. Paul, at the moment we suffer a lot of fear because of this lockdown. A lot people don't know how, don't know why, and do they still have the job? Like the event industry, it's all closed down. So people are standing still at the moment and still think from, okay, is there another story in me that I have to follow? How do we find our story?
Well, let's just take for a moment where we are right now, and that is, by many people's definition, in a crisis. And a lot of the work that I do with individuals and corporations around the world is focus on the language we use. And if we take the word crisis, crisis actually means decision point. So we in the world right now are at a decision point, and individually we're at a decision point. And if anything, my call to action for people today is, what decision are you going to make? So if we consider where we are today and the power of stories, let me then give you just one reflection as to why a story is so important and how we can find it. In ancient Ireland, there was two types of people that you wanted to be. You either wanted to be the king or you wanted to be the poet. The king because he ruled the people. The poet because he moved the people. By the way, in ancient Ireland, there was as many kings as there were queens, so we could say the king or the queen. There are too many kings or queens today in our world of leadership, ruling. And what the world is calling for, particularly at this decision point that we're in, is for us to be poets, because the poet moves the people. Now, how do we move people? By living our story. And the first thing that we need to do to find our story is to go inwards, not outwards, but inwards. The first journey is an inward journey.
And is it, yeah, people are struggling. Yeah? Sometimes you have that feeling on, okay, I love to do that. Is it a feeling what you really love to do? Or do we have to focus on, okay, what does success mean for us?
Yeah, so success is one of those words that I regularly work with and I challenge. I get some audiences to write out the word success carefully, and then I get them to cross it out and instead put the word significance. There's a great difference in how we feel about success or significance. And significance is about personal meaning. The first question, therefore, as we go inward to find our story is, when am I most myself?
I like that.
This is the question we need to ask ourselves. And it's like you dance like nobody's watching. It's not about anybody else right now. It's just about you. Go inwards, ask yourself, when am I most myself? And after we do that, we then go outwards and ask, how do we serve others? And the final question is, how do we live our story? Sorry, Maurice, go ahead.
Yeah. Is it also, okay, what's for me most important? Is it what we are now, we really know that health is most important. That our family, maybe it's most important for us. That I can show you that you try to be the best dad. It's for us most important. Is it money? No. No, but yeah, just for me, it's, I love.
Oh, it seems Maurice is just frozen. Chris, is he frozen for you as well?
He's frozen for me. He's moving a little bit.
Yeah.
He might come back.
Oh,
I'm back now. Yeah. So for me, it's very important that I can connect people from all over the world and add value to people and society. Chris, you know, the number one thing of human beings is the fear of public speaking. The number one thing. The second thing you know as well. What is it?
Fear of death.
Fear of death.
And the third one, fear of death by public speaking, right?
Tell me more about I think everybody wants to know, how can we start and just do it?
Yeah, so really on that TED story I started with just earlier, you know, I was sick in bed and Maurice calls me and he asked me to do a TEDx talk. I go, yeah, fine, no problem. When is it? And he goes, it's tomorrow, right? And where a lot of the fear comes in, you don't want to get rid of these nerves. These nerves are great. They mean you're doing something right. Generally, we fear what we want, and the more we want something, the more we fear it. If you look at the psychology of that, the bigger the stakes, the more we want it, the more nervous we're going to get. And so it's not about getting rid of the nerves, which is what a lot of people want. They want to not be nervous on stage. When you're not nervous on stage, quite frankly, it's a very boring place. There's no energy propelling you forward. And so it's really about understanding how to manage your nerves. And really, everything, how you see the world, how you imagine the world, you make that up. You literally make that up through the things that you're thinking in your mind. And so one of the first steps to having the courage, because, you know, we started on change the world, change your story. You really are your story, whether you like it or not. It's internal. It starts with you. You are your story. So do you have the courage to share it? And that really comes down to, do you have a method on how to share it? And are you practicing that often enough so that you actually develop the confidence to do it again and again and again and generate results through it? And so really, back to these managing your nerves, it's really how you imagine the outcome, how you imagine the moment after you share your story. Are they going to like it? Well, and they're not going to like it. Now, that stuff you make up. That's completely a figure of your imagination. And the key is to think about the good stuff, because when you think about the good stuff, nervousness and excitement are the same emotion. Scientifically proven, they release the same types of hormones in your body. If you imagine the bad stuff, you're going to feel nervous. If you imagine the good stuff, you're going to feel excited. And so that takes you from a hesitant phase, because we don't like to refer to ourselves as being nervous. No, we're hesitant. We're hesitating on opportunity, too busy, not enough time, I need to be prepared. So you shove the opportunity off to somebody else. And the key is to get into an excitement phase so that when an opportunity does present itself, you actually take that opportunity, because opportunities don't just appear, you create them.
Yeah, yeah. And of course, money is also a thing for a lot of people, okay, to change and follow their own story. Right, Paul?
For sure. And, you know, Chris is highlighting here something very important about it being brave. And it's interesting when we think about being brave, sometimes we think about it's out there fighting the dragon. The dragon's never out there. The dragon's always in here, metaphorically. And what it calls us to be is, as I say, the first question that I'm encouraging you to ask is, when am I most myself? And this is about making it truly personal. Now, Oscar Wilde, the great Irish writer, would say, be yourself because everybody else is taken. And it is such a simple and profound thing to say, and yet we're on this lifelong journey to truly be ourselves. Mm-hmm. So when you meet somebody that has tapped into this, they have a sense of presence. And the great leaders we have in the world, the great individuals we have in the world, are those who have a sense of presence to be themselves. And the great thing about meeting some of these individuals is you realize they're not perfect. What they are themselves. And because they can hold that, they have the ability then to go outwards. And I love what Chris is highlighting here about, you don't want to get rid of the nerves, you want to translate them into an energy. Speaking for 23 years, I still have an energy when I go onto stage.
Yeah, because you love it. I think it's a joy what you're doing. That's really for me most important, of course, connecting with the trailer. And there's one thing I really must share with you. I connect people from all over the world, and I connected that one guy who made this beautiful video. That's Arjen van Eygen. He is in this webinar as well. We really would like to thank him, because we were on the same journey. We felt the same focus. And beginning of this lockdown, I asked him, let's do it. Let's create a video that resonates and that's would love to spread the positivity and purpose in the world. And it's not about me, it's not about other people, it's about how you serve and help other people in this world. So thank you, Arjen. Thank you, Arjen. Yeah, we have the last 10 minutes, and maybe we can use the chat if we can use it. And in my screen, I don't see any questions, but maybe Paul, do you have a question for Chris?
Yeah, for sure. So one of the, I coach many people like yourself to speak. And one of the challenges that I often find that people have is they start thinking about the audience more so than how they actually are present. Is there a reflection that you can kind of give on that? We need both, of course. The idea of how do we have our presence while hold the audience?
So, you know, when I started speaking only a couple of years ago, really as a professional speaker, I started by asking myself one key question, because it's all about feelings in the end. Feelings give rise to emotions, and that's what dictates all the behavior we exhibit. So the key question is, how do you want people to feel after they hear you speak? And I define those feelings. And funnily enough, you should say presence, Paul, because I have 3 feelings that I want to satisfy every time I open my mouth. Now, life's a stage. That's Hamlet. And we are born natural public speakers. We speak every day, our whole lives. And so life's a stage. And so every time I open my mouth, I have to satisfy 3 feelings. And the first feeling is I want people to feel present when they hear me speak. And one thing I realized, in order to make someone feel a certain way, you have to feel that way too. Now, that's a really, really important concept. If you want others to feel present in the room with you, you must feel present. Now, the second feeling I try to satisfy is I want people to feel inspired. And so the only way to make them feel inspired is I need to feel inspired. And that's where story cooks in so well, because I just find a story that literally inspires the hell out of me, and I share that with them. And over time, very quickly, they start to just feel inspired. And the third feeling is I want them to feel energized, because you can have all the knowledge in the world, but unless you take action and apply that knowledge, nothing happens. And so I need them to feel energized, even if it's just to make a note or to make that call afterwards or to ask that question. Those are the 3 feelings I try to satisfy all the time. A feeling of being present, inspired, and energized. And everything I say, everything I do is designed to make people feel that way.
Beautiful.
What's lovely about it is that
Paul, sorry, Paul, before we leave, there's really one important question. It's you got that question many times, of course. Can you give some more tips on how to find your own and best story?
Yeah, the first and foremost tip is very simple and yet profound. Be yourself. Now, how do you do that? This is about reflecting and connecting to yourself. Reflect, connect, reflect, connect. The key question that I ask myself every time that I seek this process is, when am I most myself? Mm-hmm. That's the first step. The second step then is to ask yourself, when I'm going outwards, is how do I serve others? What you will notice is that those who have a presence are connected to something bigger than themselves. So there's a paradox here. You have to be completely yourself, yet connected to something bigger. So we go internal. When am I most myself? Then we go external, which is how do I serve others? And then the third component of this is onwards, which is how do I live my story? When am I most myself? How do I serve others? How do I live my story? And this is something I feel that Chris is echoing here, this idea of presence, this idea you have to be the story. Actually, it's something that Maurice, you and I have often spoken about, being human to connect human to human.
Yeah. And then again, that question that a lot of people are thinking, okay, I have a job, I still have a job, I'm still happy, but still I feel something that there is more. I still feel that something there's more, but the fear of get rid of your job and focus on your own life story. How can those people make that first step to become even more happier?
Sorry, you're asking me?
Yeah.
Sure. So in this time that we're all facing, we have closed the outer horizons and our inner horizons have come more to the surface. We've been reflecting either consciously or in a way where our environment has forced us to do that, to be more reflective. And with that reflection, many things come to the surface. What we do is we hold that and ask ourselves, how am I most myself in this context? And what will happen, and this is the practice I do with others as I coach them, many stories will come to the surface. And it's about following the one that is closest to them.
Yeah. We are almost ending the last 5 minutes. Chris, can you share the audience? Give us some takeaways, maybe where you can start now with and take your own journey. Go ahead.
You know, Maurice, I really wanted to connect on what Paul was just saying now. I really wanted to connect on what Paul was just saying on how to live your story.
Yeah.
Because that's a really important point. You need to walk the talk, right? And how I live my story is very simple. Remember I said life's a stage. That's Hamlet, right? Every time you open your mouth, you're public speaking. You're speaking to somebody, and you're speaking through storytelling. And so what I realized is that, damn, I have control over how these stories unfold. I have control on how to write the book of my life. The only thing is, you are the actor and the director of your life. You act through your actions, you direct through your choices, but you are never the writer, because other people contribute to the script. Other people are putting in their opinions. Other people are pushing you off track through the things that they say and do. And that's where all the frustration comes in, because why are they putting this text into my book of life, right? And so it's about understanding that you are not the only writer in your story, but you are always the actor through your actions, and you are always the director through your choices. And so what I ask myself when I'm in a story, and I know I'm in a story when there's emotion, because emotions are linked to stories and stories are linked to emotions. And so when I'm frustrated, or when I'm happy, or when there's a big emotion there, I know I'm in a story. So I ask myself, how do I want this story to end? What story would I be proud sharing from a stage next year about this moment that I'm in? What are the learning lessons? And so I start to act and direct that story in a certain way and give it the ending I want it to have. And I just have to realize that I'm not the only one writing the story. And that is how I live out my story.
Yeah. And at the moment, Chris, you're now helping people to share yourself and give them some great tips. If you are interested, of course, email to info@assembleespeakers.com, and we connect you with Chris. More than happy. You do that for free. Everything is here for free. Paul from Ireland, give us some last takeaways before our people leave this session.
Wonderful. Thank you. There's so much we can say in this short period of time. One of the things that comes to mind is a journey that I had through India, and I met an Indian guru, and we had a great conversation. And one of the things that he shared with me was, he said that out of the hundreds of people that come to him for advice, he says most of them ask him the wrong question. And I said, well, what is the right question? And he says, the question is not how do I, but rather who can I be? It is not about the doing of the thing, but it's about the being of the thing. We are now in a crisis. A crisis is a decision point. My call to action for everybody today is to decide, find your story, tell your story, be the poet. There's enough kings and queens in the world. Be the poet.
Thank you so much, Paul. You, Chris, last minute. Some takeaways.
So just connecting back to the beginning, you are your story in the end, whether you like it or not. You build your story of life through the choices that you make. And so do you have the courage to share that with other people? Because change is inspired by stories. And so to create change, to create positive change, or whatever change you want to create in this world, it requires you to have the courage to get up there and share your story, whether it be one person or 1 million people. It starts with you. And we kept going back, Paul, to this, having the courage to be you. It starts inside. Now, right at the end of the rainbow for me, when you become the best speaker that you can be, you simply become yourself on stage. You become conversational on stage, and you become yourself. So my challenge to you is, do you have the courage to do that, to truly be yourself and share your stories through you and who you are and how you see the world and how you've experienced life?
Thank you so much for this beautiful word. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Chris, for having you on this digital day. The power of your story, the power of collaboration. And let's do it, people, let's do it. Let's engage and help each other to find our own meaningful story. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.